We've been spending some time on Mondays with our good friend from Mercy Health, Dr. Dennis Norem. And, I know it's Tuesday. You're thinking, hey, did I miss it? No. Got a little bit of a scheduling conflict, so we thought we would get together this morning with the good doctor. Dr. Norem, good morning to you.
Good morning to you guys.
How's everything going this morning?
So far, so good. The sun's shining. That's always a plus.
That is always a plus. Until later on when we have a heat index of about 98, then, we long for those days of a cool winter breeze, right?
Absolutely. This run of heat for the next week is not going to be good.
Does heat have anything to do with COVID-19? I have read so many conflicting things saying that warmer weather means better conditions and all that, but then as you look around and you see flare-ups and states rethinking reopenings and what they're doing with it, does the weather actually have any sort of input on this?
Probably don't know yet. The thought was that COVID-19 was going to act like the flu viruses. When the weather warmed up, it was going to diminish and it was going to be much less of a problem. Unfortunately, it looks like it's the opposite. The southern states where it's the hottest are having the most difficulty. So I think, again, it's another one of those characteristics of COVID-19 that we're not really going to know until we get a little further down the road. We may find, in fact, the warm weather actually stimulates the virus instead of reducing its spread.
You mentioned the southern states having a little bit of a problem. Arizona, California, Florida, all reenacting some restrictions right now. Is this the second wave that we're hearing about? We had heard about. Are we in a second wave? Did we ever get out of the first wave? What's going on down south?
I think most people generally feel this is still the first wave. Pandemics don't affect everybody at the same time equally, and I think this is a good example of how it's popped up in certain areas. Now it's starting to come down in those areas. Other areas that weren't hit as hard are having flare-ups, not unexpected. We're seeing some recurrences, certainly in the California area, as they were aggressive to limit things at the beginning, but now it's tending to flare back up. I think this is just all part of that first wave. I don't think we're going to see a second wave until we feel like we have numbers down really across most of the country, and then we'll have to see if it flares back up in areas that have been quiet for some period of time.
Okay, so that would be kind of the definition of it. Not, we're seeing more and more and more because we haven't really backed off of all of this enough for it to come in again then.
Absolutely. It's really has not reached its peak yet, I don't think, across the whole country. We hope it was going to, but it looks like we still haven't reached that national peak yet.
Looking at a thing from the Associated Press saying actually 20% of America lives in a virus hotspot. Showed 137 of 3,142 counties in the U.S. that were under a higher alert, about 4% at the time, but measured by population, those counties represent a vastly higher share, over 1 in 5 people in the U.S.
And I think that illustrates the density issue. Generally speaking, it's been a much bigger problem in areas of higher density. We saw that with New York City and some of the urban areas. So you would expect that the denser populations are going to be the ones that are most affected.
Not only are we seeing the numbers of infections going up, but we're seeing infection rates spiking a little bit too. What we aren't seeing, according to the data we have, is the increase in COVID deaths. Is that because it's a younger population that's getting tested more frequently and becoming COVID-19 positive, or what's the reasoning for the high number of cases, but still the low number of deaths we're seeing?
I think you've hit multiple factors. Number one, we're doing more testing, so we're seeing higher numbers of people positive. Number two, it's affecting the younger population a little more now, which, as we've discussed, don't get as sick. And number three, which I think has been a little bit lost in the discussion, is we are having much more success with treatment. We've talked a little bit about the antivirals, the dexamethasone, not putting people on ventilators. there's been a learning curve, and I think we're seeing success on the treatment end to avoid death. So I think it's all of those factors.
You mentioned not putting as many people on ventilators. When did that switch happen?
Well, I think they discovered several weeks ago that putting a person on a ventilator in a traditional manner was not a good thing, as 80 to 90% of those patients did not survive. So they've come up with different techniques. I think we've mentioned them, about putting people face down, giving them high flow oxygen, using medications such as dexamethasone to avoid having to intubate them and have them on ventilators. And that seems to be making a significant difference, along with the remdesivir, the antiviral for the sickest patients. So all of those things seem to be affecting our ability to avoid ventilators and avoid death.
So this is one of those things that as this has evolved, the pandemic has evolved, and the ways of going at combating it have evolved. We're learning new things, and I would think we're learning new things every day. When I say we, I mean you and the medical community are learning new things every day about what we're showing a trend that this works. We're showing a trend that this doesn't work. Initial thought was we should try this, and now it turns out that isn't the way to go about it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, hydroxychloroquine was a good example of something that everybody thought was going to work. And I think it was widely used across the country in hospitalized patients until we discovered it really didn't work. And in many patients, it may have made things worse. The pandemic has been interesting in that because of the nature of this new infection, I think the medical community has been willing to try anything and everything. Instead of waiting to see if a therapy is proven, I think we've really tried to throwing things on the wall and seeing what sticks, which in a way has been very beneficial, I think.
Being from the state of Illinois, we're not used to being at the top of good lists all the time. It appears right now we are in the top of a good list as far as cases and reopening, and kind of the trend here in the state seems to be moving the right direction. What steps do we take in the last couple months, do you think attributes most likely or best to these results?
Well, I think that our state was aggressive in locking things down fairly early and not allowing things to open up too quickly. I think we were pretty quick on, mandating masks or suggesting that people wear a mask. And frankly, people in Illinois, I think, have done a pretty good job of following the recommendations. What's interesting is they've been up to Wisconsin a few times in the last few weeks, and people there don't seem to pay much attention to the mask. Now, granted, they haven't had a major flare-up up there, but you just wonder if they're going to be hit at some point here in the near future because they're not following guidelines as well as the Illinois people have.
What do you say to people, Dr. Norem? Because we're seeing it everywhere we go. There's blowback on the masks, and the quick dismissal of it's a political thing doesn't I think cover everybody. I think at some points you're getting people who are just feeling trapped. Feeling as though, is this doing anything for me other than inhibiting my normal day-to-day life? When I see a sign on the store that says you got to wear a mask when you come in, but when you go in and you see the people who work there with one pulled down over their nose, hanging off of their ear, there's not a unanimity among feelings on that one. What can you say to people who are either on the fence or leaning toward the, screw the mask?
Well, I say, please think about it. It's the best thing that we have, social distancing and masks, to protect yourself and protect the people who are around you. So please reconsider, your thoughts. I understand people's frustration. It's absolutely frustrating. I get frustrated every day when I put the mask on and my glasses fog up and I can't see a darn thing.
Yep.
I readjust the mask and, I go, oh man, I can't wait till I get this stupid thing off. But you have to stop and think that this COVID-19 is not going away. People are still dying from it. And even though it's frustrating, it is one of those issues that that we're trying to help everybody. It's for the greater good.
Staying on the topic of masks, there's some thoughts bouncing around the old internet and social media about masks actually being harmful to you. A lot of people are talking about carbon dioxide respiration. You're not getting the right oxygen load to you. Actually, it breeds germs inside of there. You're meant to expel, carbon dioxide and bring in oxygen. Mind poking some holes into those theories for me?
I'd like to poke a hole. I saw the lady on the news who was almost in tears because she was convinced that she was breathing in her own carbon dioxide, and somehow that was going to, I don't know, affect her brain or something. I think her brain had already been affected. But anyway, there's just no basis for that. Now, granted, if you have a very thick mask that air doesn't flow through, yes, you could probably increase your carbon dioxide levels slightly. That's not an issue for 99.9% of us. People with bad lung disease, COPD, there could be some issues with not getting enough air in. Asthmatics might be an example, who are having an asthmatic flare. Obviously, if there's an impediment to getting air in and out, that could cause a problem. But that's a very small minority of us. A person with no lungs, there really is no concern about inadequate oxygen, too much carbon dioxide. The germs, yeah, it's a bit of a concern. If you're wearing a dirty mask full of germs, probably not a good idea. You need to clean your mask. If your mask becomes torn or worn, you need to get a new one.
If I have a cloth mask, real quick, how often do I need to be washing that?
I would say you should probably wash it every 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
What would be ideal is rotate a mask. Have at least 4 or 5 masks. There's pretty good evidence if a mask sits on the shelf away from everything for 4 days, there's really no chance that there's any active virus on it.
And it's funny when you look around, you see people who've got a box of the disposable ones sitting around there. Are those fine? Basically anything to cover up the face? Is there something in particular? Don't go with the disposable. Go with cloth. Is there a common recognition of which one's better?
Well, I think the disposable masks, in some ways, are a little more consistent, but I think multi-layer cotton masks are fine. And again, keep them clean and ideally rotate them so you're not wearing the same mask every day, 3 and 4 days in a row. That's probably a much better way to go. That's what we basically do here with our mask at the hospital. We have a 4-day rotation. If we're seeing a COVID patient, our N95 mask is rotated. So we wear that same mask each time we see that patient. We put it on the shelf for 4 days, and then we come back and use it again.
And then one more thing on masks. That's the hot topic right now. The other complaint or myth I've heard about them is that they actually the spaces between the fabric is too wide. You're still going to get viruses coming through. Here's what I think from my uninformed opinion. Yes, you could probably fish a virus through there, but we're still talking about water droplets, right? That is the main transmission of this virus. And if you can stop a water droplet, that's the 99% of the reasons for mask wearing, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Droplets and person-to-person contact with droplets is far and away the way that we transmit it. Aerosols, we're still not completely sure about. Obviously, a mask won't trap those because those are fine particles floating in the air. But the droplets are the number one issue.
And another thing that has jumped up is, when people look at at people who have died from COVID-19, when you look at the demographics, generally we had been looking at older numbers, older age groups. And now I'm looking at a piece from theweek.com talking about back in April when the virus first peaked, most of the patients testing positive were over 50. Now, the majority are reporting relatively young. We're looking at nearly 1/3 of intensive care patients under the age of 50, at least out of Texas. People under 50 made up 50% of those hospitalized with the virus in June, as well as 30% of those in intensive care. What can be made of that?
I think it can make a couple thoughts. Number one, this pandemic affected the most susceptible people first. So the people with chronic illnesses, older, probably were more susceptible at the beginning of the pandemic. As it spread, and we don't know yet, but maybe the virus has changed a little bit. That'll be interesting to see the studies on the genetics and if there's been changes in the viral genetics. But the exposures have become, I think, much more, how do I want to put this? The younger people have probably gotten exposed to this in larger amounts, more and more and more, and finally become ill. And again, getting back to being a little more careless, you could see there was one bar. I think there were 80 positives out of one bar. So it illustrates that person-to-person close contact can affect anybody. But I think part of this, again, is the fact that the older, more susceptible people got it first, and I think the older people are doing a better job of the social distancing and the mask, to be honest.
And then one more mask question, get you out of here. We've kind of agreed the last couple of weeks about when and where we're wearing a mask. We're still on the same page. If you're outside walking by yourself through the woods, whatever, we're all right with masks. I have I wear a mask not when I go out, but when I go in. When I go into a place. If I'm outside, I'm generally outside of big gatherings. But outside, I feel generally safe and protected. It's just when I cross a threshold into a place, that's when we mask up. We still on the same page there?
Absolutely. And I think, again, when you're outside and you're distanced from people, there's really no reason to wear a mask. There's no droplets that are going to be anywhere near you from anybody else. So I think you're fine.
All right. Yeah, keep that in mind because that's the way I've been doing it as well. I hit the sidewalk on my way in, it goes on. I hit the sidewalk on my way out, it comes off.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's a good rule. You'll be fine.
Dr. Norem, as always, we appreciate the time and the expertise. And once again, if you're willing, we would love to get together. We're off next Monday. So, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, why don't we take a week break and get back at this again if you would be willing?
That would be great. You want to do it next Tuesday or?
We're off Tuesday.
Yeah, we're off Tuesday. So, yeah, let's take a whole week off of this.
We'll take a week off.
Yeah, and then we'll come back and you can tell us how a cure has been found and everything's fine.
Ooh.
Yeah, and we can just all get rid of our masks.
There you go. Dr. Norem, thank you very much for your time. That's Dr. Dennis Norem from Mercy Health at 7:25. Here's Rush.